Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Breakthrough Innovation. Today, we're joined by Christian Hammer. He's the founder of Heart.io. He's a seasoned leader in technology innovation. He has a lot of expertise in product strategy, AI, scaling organizations. Christian really helps businesses to turn their bold ideas into some real-world impact. So actually making things come to life, helping people break down barriers to innovation. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about what it takes to drive some meaningful change, some of the biggest challenges companies face, how AI is reshaping the future, product development, all that sort of stuff. So let's dive in. Christian, great to have you on the show today.
Hey, Preston, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's kick off with our first question. So you kind of describe yourself as someone who helps businesses get out of their own way. I'd love for you to share an example of when you did that in the past, maybe a little example of like where you got to today or how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I spent the first half of my career as a repeat serial entrepreneur, just start business, sell business, start business, fail business. And I don't remember the exact moment when my wife turned to me and said, the big businesses have the same problem that you keep going and doing on your own. They run into this point where they fail to continue to scale. They don't grow anymore. They become cost-cutting focused. I'm of exactly the right age that the big internet boom was like mid-career for me. So we had a pretty good idea that it came down to just having a much bigger risk appetite than most businesses could do. And there's a reason why they don't have a big risk appetite. They have a lot to lose. And when you're first starting off, you don't. So I got introduced to then CTO of Nike, and they were looking for somebody to come in and be their entrepreneur, which just meant like, come in and show us how to innovate faster than we do today, because it takes us 4 years to get a product out the door. And I didn't really have a lot of experience with physical product. Like somebody coming from the .com world, coming into a place like Nike where they make shoes, there was a lot to learn, but came in with a way of thinking that was new to them. And that really was, I'm going to tell you some theories about organization that I think are failing big businesses, right? Pretty early on, when you start scaling an organization, you start siloing teams because it gains efficiency. I know that if I have a team focused on like customer support, like I can make it a lot easier to train people. I can give them systems that allow them to be a lot more productive, and it gets a lot more efficient. The problem with most organizations is they don't draw the lines exactly where they should be. And I always say that the best way to think of it is if a customer from outside was to look at your organization and say, how do I do this? Who would I talk to? And if your answer isn't that person, that team, your organization structured wrong, because it always has to be organized around the customer. And so I came in with that model, but it's different in a company the problem with a company like Nike is their customer wasn't you. They didn't sell direct to consumer. They sold to Foot Locker and to Guard Sports and the retailers that you'd go to. Yeah. So that was the first task was let's teach them to be direct to consumer. Let's start building out the website and allowing you to like the e-commerce website and allow them to start selling direct. So as we did that, we started a group called Valiant. So the Valiant Lab, the Nike digital innovation team, I'm one of the two founders of that started it within Nike. And short story, it became, by the time I left, it was a $2 billion part of the org. Now I think it's $8 billion. So it's a huge chunk of the business today.
Yeah.
But our way of approaching every problem was a lot like a hackathon. So we would start with what problem needs to be solved for the customer? What is the thing that doesn't work today? And how are we going to solve that? And somebody had this really good premise that like customers want not just now, they want custom. They want something that is them. That's why they're buying from Nike is because it's something that they can say like, look at how cool my shoes are and look how fancy, whatever. Like they're making a statement about themselves. So give them the ability to do that. And so Nike ID was born from that. It was somebody saying, what if we could make it so that a person could design their own shoes and buy them direct from us? But to accomplish that, there was no part of the organization that was really oriented around this concept of custom. And we had figured out how to do direct shipment, because if you think of the problem between I sell to a Guard Sports where I send a container full of shoes and shirts to a location, to I sell to you where I send you a carton of a pair of shoes, there's a big change that has to come to the entire supply chain and logistics, right? Well, now add in custom. Instead of ordering 100,000 of in a bunch of different sizes of shoes, you're ordering one. How do you get that done? So we had to organize around problem areas. And that actually became kind of our mantra of anytime we looked at a problem, we would self-organize around this, like, what problem are we solving? That team is working on that. So the teams no longer had a long-term mission. Their long-term mission was to solve the problem for the customer. The short-term mission was the immediate problem for the customer. What do I do right now? And it fundamentally transformed their business.
I mean, that's just amazing. And honestly, that's a lot of what JL and I talk to people about as well, is your organization is getting in your own way.
Yeah.
Just how you organize people is getting in your own way. And it's so much more efficient to say, this group of people, go solve this problem. Don't worry about departments. Don't worry about titles. Just go and solve the problem.
And if you can get people to volunteer to it effectively, like if you can give them permission to work on it, and that's one of the problems that a lot of organizations run into, is the hierarchy and the way that you're organized also creates permission issues, where like, I really want to work on that. It's something I care a lot about, but I don't have the right to do it.
Yeah. And all too often those inherent permissions, or where you have to go and ask for permission, that just slows everything down.
How many people do I need to get approval from to do the right thing?
I've seen a lot of companies that end up having almost more of a veto culture. You have to get everybody on board, because if one person says no, it's vetoed. And so then you just maintain the status quo. It's too difficult to make any change.
Well, I think that comes to, so you can use what we call the maturity model and take a look at an organization, right? And every product has a maturity. It has that early, like, figuring out what product market fit looks like. And then you get into the rapid adoption phase. Then you get up to the point where you're crossing the chasm and all that fun stuff, right? But there is always that terminal end where we're just managing the end of life of this thing. It has a life just like a human being. Most companies don't recognize where they're at in that cycle, because the companies fall into that too if they don't keep that innovation front end moving, right? You will end of life your company if you don't keep innovating.
Totally agreed. So I think one obstacle that I often see in companies is that they have some of these great ideas, but they can't scale it either from an idea to a prototype, or from a prototype to like actual company. So what are some strategies that you found to help companies make that step forward?
Yeah, so it runs into the same problem, right? That initial concept is usually, I'm gonna take a big step back for a second and talk about organization again, because I think that this impacts it pretty profoundly, and it comes down to the product role usually to me. Every organization has, well, not every, but everyone I've been involved with for some time now has adopted a product mindset, which I think is good, generally speaking. Yeah. The problem is that they don't actually define the products correctly, and it goes back to that outside-in view. If the customer can't say, this is the product I use, where's the team and the person that's responsible for this thing, and you can't say that team, that person, then you're organized incorrectly. And there's a weird bias towards feature development that gets ingrained into an organization, and it has to do with like resource allocation and all that kind of fun stuff. So if you give a product manager an engineering team of 24 people and just say, like, continue delighting your customer, they're going to keep shipping features. And there's a point at which the features are causing the problem. And for me, this is directly related to scaling, because scaling is part of, in my view, making a mature product that allows you to continue to grow, which means hardening, which means making it a lot more efficient to run, which means out functionality, so you have less to support and less to maintain. That helps you scale. It also allows you to do a better job of finding the places where the technology, for example, needs to have it needs to be broken down into microservices. It needs to be moved over to serverless or whatever the hell you want to do. Like it needs to be broken down in this way to allow it to scale. You're spending your time on features because that's what the orientation of the organization is, because that's how you set it up. And as much as I love product-led growth and I love product organizations, generally speaking, I think that they get misapplied and it stops an organization from being able to scale. And if you just go back to that as first principles, like, what problem are we solving for the customer? And if the problem now isn't specifically related to scale of the technology, shift resources to something else, like shift them to doing that. Features like Jeff, what was his name? The guy that started Apple Steve Jobs. He was really famous for saying, like, for every feature you add, you need to remove 2. And I'm a big fan of putting, it's not that I actually tell you you have to remove 2, but I do want you to go through the exercise of saying, this feature is so important that I'm willing to remove those 2 to get it.
I think we often just have people who are stuck. They're unwilling to make that prioritization decision, and so they can't move forward. They're so bought into the full picture of what they have that they can't take something out. I think that lends itself to a lot of paralysis, where people just stick. They can't do anything at that point.
I mean, the default move towards just to throw bodies at it is pretty common as you're scaling, and I actually think, again, that's exactly the wrong move. Scaling is like any other discipline. Like when you start a company, there's that startup piece, finding product market fit. There's skills that you develop and like instincts that I'm going to say develop again. Instincts that you develop, which makes them not instincts, but skills that you develop over time that make you better at it. And I think scaling is the same thing. And it's just looking for those places where, like, where are we throwing away effort at things that aren't allowing us to grow? Another big part for me, and this is crossing the chasm, right? A lot of times with a product, a company, you see your early adopters and you think that represents the win. I figured it out. I've got exactly what's going to like take me to the stratosphere, right? But you're actually wrong on that. Like the early adopters tend to be risk tolerant. They're going to try things, and maybe you're giving them some major advantage against their competition, so they're willing to do it. But the mass market is very risk intolerant. And so a lot of the things that you got away with early, like shipping features frequently, don't work when you're at scale, because now you've got a risk intolerant customer set that you just changed how their 1,000 people have to use your tool, for example, and now they have to train them on the change, and now they're pissed off, right? So what got you to where you are probably won't take you the rest of the way, and you've got to change the way you think about it. Who is my audience now? Has it adapted to this environment, or do I have to adapt to them? And the second's the most likely.
Yeah, constantly asking what is the actual problem that we have to solve, and it's not the same as the problem we had yesterday.
Right, always.
One last quick question. Because you're in this technology innovation space, I'm going to ask the question that's on everybody's mind. So what's the impact of AI into technology innovation space?
Huge impact. So I think that there's always the Pollyanna view. We'll say, like, there's the utopian view and there's the dystopian view. It's going to make life easy for everybody. All the boring jobs are going to go away. You're going to live in a ever abundant future, and we'll all be able to make paintings and sing songs, and it'll be wonderful, right? And then the dystopian view is all our jobs are going to go away and we're all screwed. And it's neither. Every technology that comes along is neither. Like when fire was first discovered and tamed, you could heat your home, you could cook your food, but you could also burn down the village. And it's always true. AI falls into the same camp, and it's not magic. A lot of people keep putting these concepts onto it that it's like, well, like it can do things that are unimaginably impossible for a human being to do. And that's not really true. I mean, there are great uses of AI technologies to do things like protein folding, and they found 250,000, or they were able to like describe the shapes of like 250,000 proteins in a matter of weeks, that we had done 120, I think, total in the previous 25 years. And so it does allow for a rapid acceleration of certain things, but they're not typically the things that people are worried about. It's going to change. It will change the job market. There's no question about that. And I think that the software engineer role is the first that's definitely being impacted, but I think in a very good way. First, I think senior software engineers are fairly safe. You've got knowledge and experience that the LLMs just don't have. But junior engineers, you're screwed. Like you need to start thinking of your role in a different way. But here's that different way. And I think this is where product managers all of a sudden are in great position for the future of this. So I've long said that I'm a technologist. I write code every day. I've written lots of systems, and I actually kind of enjoy it, but I kind of enjoy it because I see myself like a wizard. I can make things happen that impress my friends and impress clients and all that kind of fun stuff. And that's what always drew me towards it. But you know what? I don't have to write code to do that anymore. I'm a really good product person that can sit down and be like, what problem am I going to solve? Okay, how would I solve that? And I can walk through it with the tool and it'll build it for me. And that to me is such a moment of like euphoric, like exciting, oh my God, look at what you can do. And so I started grabbing some of my really technical but never been coder product manager friends. And I said, let's find a way, let's prove this point. can we reproduce tools that we really hate, but are out in the market doing something like Workday or Concur or, things like that, like these crappy things, can we make them better, and how fast can we do it? And product management, skill set, understanding, like you've been doing it long enough that oh, this is what the engineers are going to tell me we have to do next. I better tell the system, like using Cursor and like building up your templates and all that kind of fun stuff on top of it. But I think the product manager of yesterday is the software engineer of today and the future. It's going to become a critical role because they've always been the translation between the customer needs, the company needs, and the technology, but they always had to go through another translation step, which was the engineering team. And I don't think that's necessary anymore. At least it's not as necessary. And I think it's going to become less necessary as we continue. So that's the big change right now. And it'll go through industries. I think that, so like with Heart, what we're doing is we're an automation, we're like a conversational automation overlay for the existing systems you have. So if you already use SAP and Salesforce and whatever else, and you don't like using it and you don't want to have to train staff on using it, you simply put Heart in place and then you have a conversation with it and it learns, and this is the important part, it learns you and your needs and what you need the technology to do over time and just executes on your behalf. I think of it like Jarvis from Iron Man, where right? Same concept, but we can actually do that today. And if we can do that today, here's the next point, software's dead. If you think that you can just go build software and have any type of enduring product, you are wrong, because I can reproduce your product in 2 days without engineers. That means their software as we know it, not a market anymore. It's going to go away. So what does that change? Well, that means that everybody has the ability to be that instant entrepreneur. If you want, you can go solve real problems, and there are people that will not take the time to learn to use the tools, and so they won't fix it for themselves. So you have that opportunity to go build it and sell it and just keep going. Longer than about 18 months, I don't know, because things are evolving so fast that I have theory, but I don't know yet. That's the other big thing is speed. Like speed, we've always said speed kills, right? Speed's so important, but velocity today is more important than it's ever been. And if you're not already using AI-based tools, you are falling behind rapidly. And every day you fall behind because of the logarithmic scale of acceleration here is almost an infinity that you've fallen behind already. So the best advice I can give is just find tools, start using them now, and figure out what works for you and figure out how you can make yourself, I hate saying productive, but it is like more productive because that's all that's going to matter.
I think that's a great point to end on is basically go and use AI. It is the next thing. The best thing you can do for yourself is to go and use it and use it aggressively to figure out how it can change your life, how it can change the way you work. And your productivity. I love that. Christian, thanks again for being on the show with us. One final question. If people want to connect with you, if they want to collaborate, how should they?
The easiest way I would say is either Techtastic Podcast on Patreon. I do respond to that pretty rapidly, as well as techtastic.tech is the website for the podcast. That's the easiest way to get hold of me. But LinkedIn also, you can find me pretty easily. I'm the first Christian Hammer that comes up on LinkedIn. I think it's C Hammer 1 or Christian Hammer. I don't know. It's on LinkedIn. Is a great place to find me. Those are the best. But you can also check out heart.io, and it's HARTE.io. That's as in the medieval word for the bunny rabbit, a hare, a heart. Yeah. Heart and soul.
Thanks again for being on. For everybody who's listening, thanks for joining us until the end. As always, we'd love for you to take something that you learned from the episode, apply it into your work, into your life, and then let us know how it went. We'd love to hear any successes or challenges that you're having. And please make sure to like and subscribe, as always. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.